G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Today we're going to be having a look at the IAR-81, also known as the IAR-81, because we have too many weebs in this community. Like this video if you're a weeb, and comment, I'm a dirty weeb. Yes, that's right. I'm kidding. I love you all. But yeah, the only indigenous design for a Romanian plane in the entire game. I think this is really, really interesting because there aren't many nations that get their own indigenous plane in the game. The Finnish, I'm sure the Finns developed something. I'm sure, of course, Australia has theirs with the boomerangs and the AC-4, which I'm pretty proud of. I might have to do a video on them, but AC-4, I've got some footage lying around, and the boomerangs, they're tough, man. You get put up against BF-109 G2s, and it's pretty much game over because you can't do anything really except turn fight at low speed, and it's really, really tough because you run out of energy so quickly. But we're not here to talk about the boomerang. We are here to talk about the good old IAR-81, which I'm just going to call the 81 because I'm sick of saying IAR. Anyway, what I'm basically doing is I'm putting this thing into a climb, and I'm expecting to use it as a boom and zoomer. I'm expecting to find people below me, and basically going from there, trying to boom and zoom, and using those cannons, because you have two MG151s, and you can really put them to work. It's surprising how well these cannons perform, particularly because everything is flying really slow, and you get a heap of gun time. So anything with potent guns is going to be really, really strong. And two MG151s in the wing, plus your two 7.7s, it's glorious. It's amazing. And if you're a tanker, this plane actually is a fairly decent CAS plane. It's one of the best in the entire tree. That is the Italian tree, because Italian and Romanian tanks tanks and planes will go together, and that makes sense to me. The Romanians didn't have enough indigenous vehicles to sort of flesh out their own tank and their own plane tree. I personally think a couple of Hungarian tanks wouldn't be too bad for the Italians either. Basically, the more the merrier. But for now, again, we'll stick to planes. So, as you can see, it's low tier. There's a Dauntless, that brings it down to 2.3. There's a Wellington, 2.3. SB2U, which I believe is 1.7. So we're in basically a full down tier. This is the most optimal matchmaking you can get, and it's on my favorite map in the entire game. I love this map for low tier. It's perfect. It has enough soft targets that count for tickets. So basically, if you're in a biplane and you don't have bombs, you can still strafe targets and do some work for your team. But if you do have bombs, you can always go for the bases. You can go for the SPGs if you can't reach the back. Or you can just go for fighters. And whilst the bombers have a distinct advantage, that's kind of cool because at low tier, the bombers don't really do a whole lot. And you can really win the war from the ground, so it's okay. Now, Hurricane, head on, 20 mils. Need I say more? The trick is you pull off from the head on. I'm using stealth belts because I'm a tryhard, but you can use air targets just as well. I try and go for another one, but this guy is pretty hot on my tail. He gets a little clip, but it's okay because he's a Frenchy boy and he's got terrible guns. So, I go for head on with the other one. I aim way too high. I go to pull off, and I go to pull under him so that I can try and get him to commit to the dive, and surely, yes, he's committed. It's not very hard to get this at low tier. At high tier, you start to risk it a little bit more for the biscuit. You need to really watch yourself when you spend so much energy like this, because you're gonna end up with a situation where you have 2 or 3 enemy planes that are sort of disengaging, focusing on other targets, and then one that commits to you, and you end up spiraling and losing all your energy for that one, and the other 2 are still on high energy, and if you're on your own, or if you've got only one teammate with you, and they can't put the enemies down quickly, then you're in a bit of trouble. But thankfully, this is low tier. It's very, very forgiving because the players are very new. Maybe they're not good, something like that. I try and get some shots here on a dive, and you can see I've picked up a bit of speed. And the 81 is not that bad at high speed. As soon as you get to low speed, it starts to become a bus. And it's really, really, really heavy. But you need that climb, and I think you need to play this plane as a boom and zoomer. Personally, that's not really my style. I really like to play aggressively. So stuff that has really good energy retention and good acceleration is sort of more my style. But stuff that is too turny basically lends people to believe that they can't really, they can't turn with it, so they don't commit. So, for example, a Spitfire. No one turns with Spitfires because everyone knows that Spitfires turn well. And no one turns with Zeros because everyone knows that Zeros turn well. But something like a Yak, something like a Typhoon, of course, the Typhoon has its limits, but you can push certain planes, and, the IAR is just sort of not one. It's sort of in between. You can really get some crazy shots, but the enemy has to be a bit foolish. It has to be a bit sort of careless for you to really do something like that. And it's not that easy to sort of get one to commit. You need that altitude in this plane, and this plane performs well at about 5,000 meters. So at low altitudes, even in tank battles, you're not going to get good dogfighting potential out of this plane. It loses energy way too quickly. So you've got to play it reasonably conservatively, sort of like a 2.7 P-47. Fantastic guns, but terrible turn rate, and it needs to be at high altitude to perform. That's one of the strange things about this plane, and I can still do well, but this is really not a great example of how you should be playing this plane. This is about the upper limits of how reckless you should be. You can see I'm turning with a Spitfire, but at this point here, I'm maintaining a speed that's not really optimal for the Spitfire, and I've got friendlies around, so I've got people to back me up. Now, the Corsair comes in, and I pull some evasive maneuvers. I pull into him so that he'll have to reach further, and at this point, I'm spraying a little bit, and I run out of cannons. Now, this is really, really bad, because then that leaves me with 2 machine guns. It's not ideal. It is really not ideal. And the Corsair can really pull down. I did not see that coming, and I very nearly almost died. And, it doesn't matter really what you do. It's extremely tough to shake 2 people off your tail. And that's the situation that I'm in now. You can see I'm getting desperate. I'm starting to panic a little bit. I'm going up. I can see a P-47, the Corsair coming in. I'm pulling some strange maneuvers now. It's a little bit cancer, but you can see the P-47, the Corsair hasn't really landed his shots. And you can see I'm using that rudder. I thought I was going to spin out here, but the plane seems to hold itself really well. And it's almost like a movie, watching the planes sort of dance around each other, bullets flying everywhere, darting beyond and around the trees. It's kind of fun, and it was kind of intense at the same time. I was like, well, I'm dead here, I'll see how long I can survive. And then the Spitfire pulls off, which leaves me with the Corsair. And, this is where the fun begins, because with a Corsair, I know he's a little bit more heavy than me, but he's right on my ass, and I need to get him off me. So I pull a little roll, I try and get him to commit to the roll. He goes for the zoom climb and doesn't anticipate me to follow up. I go to follow. He should have cut in there, in towards me, and he doesn't follow through with the climb, which puts me in an advantage. That's hilarious. I managed to survive all of that by doing a little bit of cancer and a little bit of smart maneuvering, and now I'm right on his tail, and I can just let those 7.7s loose and get a nice little crit somewhere, and he's starting to struggle. You can see that. He's trying to pull it out, and it just goes into the trees. That was incredible. That was hilarious. I was not expecting to come out on top of that because the Corsair is just such a strong fighter. But he damaged my engine. And that's one of the things that you really can't escape from in this plane. It relies a lot on keeping its energy up. And if you lose all that energy, it doesn't get it back very easily. Not only that, but if you have a damaged engine, you're not going to get that energy back at all. You're going to be lucky to, make it across this river. For example, it's pretty tough. So you really have to play this plane a little bit conservatively. You have to go for altitude. You have to find your opportune targets. You have to play in a squad if need be. At 2.7 with the Italians, you could probably take a 202. You could probably take another Reggiane. You could probably take a low-tier BF-109. You could probably even chuck in some of the early heavy fighters, maybe a BF-110. I go for the landing here, and you've got to realize that this thing's landing gear pops out extremely slowly. But honestly, I think this is what saved me, because you can see I managed to just stop in front of the trees. But yeah, it's a really, really nice little plane. It's fun, but you've got to be patient. And for ground forces, it's not a bad plane either, because you can take it out. You can use those tiny Hansas if you want. Tiny. I need a German name that goes better than Hans, because Tiny Hans doesn't have a really nice ring. Like Tiny Tim, Tiny Ivan, they sort of have a nice ring, but I can't think of one right now. Maybe leave that one for the comments below. If you've got a good one, maybe we can christen the big rockets, the big boys, with a nice community name. But yeah, that's the IAR-81. I like it. It's kind of fun. It's kind of niche. It's a little bit, you need to be patient, but you've got those 20 mils, and nothing beats MG151s in props. So, good plane. And a really, really good pickup. Anyway, ladies and gents, take care, and I'll catch you next time. If you watch this to the end of the video, type in Romania switched halfway through, so they're bad. See you guys. I love you all. Take that as a joke, please.